Hello and welcome once again to episode 24 of Code Completion. We are a group of iOS developers and educators hoping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing your code. My name is Dimitri and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionists, Ben.
Hi.
And Spencer.
Hey.
So a quick reminder that last week we launched a community we are calling the Code Completion Club that we would love everyone to join. We hope that this can be a great place to talk with us and other listeners about iOS and Mac development, help each other out, and share the cool things you make or come across. We are all are welcome, and it's completely free to join, so please head over to codecompletion.io/join the club, all one word. So that's codecompletion.io/join the club. It's hosted on a new chatting app called Quill, which is like Slack, but better in almost every way. So we hope to see you there. So on the topic of Quill, how do you both like it?
I think it's basically, like you said, it's kind of like Slack, but better. What's really nice about it is it seems like they're committed to as native as they can get as far as the development. And so it works. I have obviously a Mac and an iPhone, but on at least on those two platforms, it works really well. It feels more like a quote unquote real app. And I like it. It's got some cool features. It's got things like threaded. You can have like sort of these threaded messages and stuff that you can't quite as easily do in Slack. So we'll have to see as our community grows, kind of where it goes from there.
Yeah, and you can really reorganize those threads, which is really, really neat.
Yeah,
that's something that we've done is, because I think we're all used to Slack, we'll, begin to just start writing messages in kind of the main place. But then you can actually turn something into a thread, like a group of messages, throw them into a thread kind of after the fact, which has been really cool in kind of our personal one, just to like keep everything, very sort of tightly organized. Like Ben said, I've really enjoyed it because I feel like the design language itself is very natural. Like in macOS, it looks like macOS. In the iOS app, it feels very, latest kind of current iOS design, following the human interface guidelines, basically. So that's pretty cool. It's good. We, just really launched it today, basically at the day of recording. So, this Code Completion Club is new, and we want to get a bunch of people on there so that it can really become a community and foster some growth and discussion and friendships and just kind of make a healthy community like Dimitri is always saying. So really, go ahead and check it out. It's free, and if anything, just come and check out Quill just to try it out as an app and see how much better Slack could be, because we all think that, and someone's coming along to actually prove that it's possible. So
yeah, definitely. I'm on one Slack team, and just as you were saying, Spencer, it's so easy to just dump all your messages in the main channel. And on that Slack team, they have a custom thread emoji that just jiggles a lot, and just threading intensifies. And that's whenever people don't use threading properly, they just spam that on every message, and the message gets across, and people start deleting and then retyping their message under a thread.
Right.
But it's definitely really nice to just be able to reorganize and kind of tailor everything such that things are nice and neat and easy to find afterwards. Because ultimately, like documenting your code, there's no point to having a lot of these discussions if you can't find it afterwards, because then you just re-rinse the same discussion over and over again. And that's helpful to no one. So yeah, we hope we'll find you there. We've already started some very brief discussions of saying hello. No one's had any problems or questions or answers yet. So we hope in the coming weeks that grows, and we'll see you there. So before we get into our main topic, it's time for our Indie App Spotlight. Spencer?
Yeah, so I am going to do it this week. Fernando is out. So we've got 3 apps to look at. Sorry, I'm just going to pull them up here. The first one is called Highlighted by, sorry if I pronounced the name wrong, Damir Stuhek. It's a really cool app that actually I have to say before I go into all 3 of these apps, They all are really well made. The UI is awesome on all of them. It makes me really jealous because the again, it's very like right now current Apple human interface guidelines. It all looks very, very good. I would assume that a lot of these are using Swift UI. If not, then they just have spent a fair amount of time going into and really kind of polishing the UI. So the first app is called Highlight. Basically what it is an app where you can kind of keep track of your books, and it's a little bit unlike the last episode's book app where it's not just for tracking books, but you say, okay, I'm reading, this book. And then what it lets you do is you can use your phone to take a picture of some passage in there that you want to highlight, and it actually uses OCR, or optical character recognition, to take that photo that you take of the page and translate it into text that you could copy and paste anywhere you want to, and also you're able to search through things and kind of keep everything organized by by the book that you're working on. You can export all of those highlights, so it's kind of a really cool way if you like using physical books, or I even tried it, of course, on my Kindle, and it worked just fine. But if you want to also have sort of some digital notes as well, it's kind of a cool way to do that. So that's the first app. Definitely go and check it out if you're into highlighting. I know that for myself, whenever I highlight books, I usually do it with a pen and a ruler, but this is actually really nice, and I might start doing that as well. The next one is called Pro Wrestling Simulator 2021, and I will be completely honest, I haven't spent a ton of time with this app. I spent about 10 minutes with each app. This one is by James Said. Again, sorry if I mispronounce your name. But I was kind of reading through, what it is, and it's sort of, you're able to simulate an entire sort of tournament of wrestling and everything. And I stumbled across a couple Reddit posts of like, hey, is there any app like this game from like 2004, I think it was? And people were like, no. And so I saw that this was kind of a recommendation. I believe this app just came out in January, so it's fairly new. But I noticed he already had like 175 reviews on his app. Again, the UI is awesome. It is sort of more, it's very text based, and I suppose that's what that kind of original version was. So I think it was, let me look it up real quick, the acronym that it was called, the original game. I had it here. Sorry to kind of be long here.
Through the magic of editing.
I know, right? And of course now I can't find it. Anyway, it's a really cool app. Even if I don't completely understand, it fully, if that's something that you were looking for making the bracketing and having it kind of come up with the results, it was a really cool app to look at. And then Replica by, I believe you pronounce it Tiago Martinho. It sounds like it's Portuguese. Is called Replica. So if you have ever used AirPlay, you can AirPlay your screen to your Apple TV or whatever. This is essentially AirPlay, but for your Chromecast, or I believe it also works on a browser. And that's pretty cool. I haven't ever seen anything like this. I know that there are apps with sort of quote unquote native support for being able to cast like YouTube, for example, to your Chromecast, but this one actually lets you cast your entire screen. It actually does a screen recording and will sort of stream that as you're running the app, so it's not just locked into apps that are compatible with Chromecast. It would work on anything, just like you can AirPlay your entire screen to AirPlay compatible devices. So I thought that was really cool, and I haven't ever seen anything like that. So go check that out. It worked great on my Chromecast. He's got a bunch of settings where you can change it to kind of favor quality if you're going to watch a video, or speed with a little less quality if you're worried about latency. Maybe if you wanted to cast your screen, you're playing a game or something. So go check it out. He's done really good work. And again, all of these apps have got some killer UI that makes me jealous. So those are our indie app spotlights for the week. Feel free to send us your app ideas. We've got a long list at this point, but we'd love to hear from you and highlight your app eventually.
Awesome. Thank you, Spencer. So on to our main topic, and that is going to be the recent rumors we've been hearing about. So at the very beginning of the month, there was rumors that we're going to have a early March event, and then a mid-March event, and then a late March event. And then at the very end of March, it doesn't look like we're going to get an event after all. But there are still tons of rumors. There's the new betas that are coming out, and these betas seem like they have a lot of new features, which typically coincides with new hardware of some sort. Like those big feature releases, those big point releases, I should say, tend to come at the same time as new hardware, in one capacity or another. And as a result, they tend to leak a lot of extra stuff. So we tend to be able to discern more out of them than others. So one of those first rumors, or not so much a rumor, but actually like a big change, is on the Apple TV. The Siri remote is no longer being referred to as the Siri remote. It's now the Apple TV remote, which makes you wonder if they're coming out with a new Apple TV. So Ben, what would you like most out of a new Apple TV?
Oh boy. Well, I think probably a new remote, right? That would be really great. At this point, one of our Apple TV remotes is cracked because it's made of glass on the top, which I feel like is a very interesting choice for a remote, something you're going to throw around on the couch and, potentially have kids playing with and whatever. So I haven't bothered to replace it because, for one thing, I'd like to just replace the whole Apple TV with a newer one, but I'm not going to do that at this point because I don't know what the day count is, but we're pretty far away from the last time that the Apple TV was updated, and that's generally not a great time to be buying such a product because usually you buy it and then the next day they announce a new one. But I think a new remote, ideally a remote that looks less like a candy bar and more like a human's hand would be fantastic. Not only is it small and fragile, but it's also basically symmetrical in the sense that without looking at it, you can't really tell whether you're holding it right side up or upside down. And in particular, because it has like a third of it, I think, is a touch screen as a touchpad. If you're holding it upside down, you end up sort of with the palm of your hand sort of touching that area and then affecting the screen, right? Moving the cursor around and stuff, doing stuff that you don't intend to do. It's by accident because you're holding it backwards. And so there's just a lot of sort of ergonomic problems with the remote that lots and lots of podcasts and articles have talked about sort of ad nauseum about how it could be improved, that it looks pretty when it's like sitting on your coffee table, right, as a piece of art, but it doesn't really work that well as a device and as an input mechanism. So that would be definitely top of my list. I don't really have any major problems with the UI or kind of how the Apple TV works. I don't have, just for the record, I don't have a Chromecast. I don't have an Amazon Fire Stick. I've never even used any of those other systems. So, if they're better in various ways, I don't know if they're better. I can't speak to that. But for me, the Apple TV interface, I think is fine. It lets us get to, all the stuff they want to get to, all the streaming services. And the TV app works well enough to sort of generally highlight the stuff that you might be watching in other apps, as long as those apps participate. And so you can kind of go there for, I don't know, half or more of what we're kind of watching. If we're watching a TV show or something, more than half the time I'll probably end up in the TV app. And I just, you can find the next episode and click it, and it just jumps you right into the appropriate streaming app and then starts playing it. So I don't really have any problems with the UI. But I can say that I am generally a fan of it, not just because of that it's part of the Apple ecosystem, but also the AirPlay is nice if you're going to AirPlay something from your phone or your iPad, and also in general I like Apple's privacy policies better than lots of those other companies. And in particular, we're looking at maybe upgrading to a new TV. We have 1080p, two 1080p TVs, and we're looking at maybe upgrading one of them to a 4K. But I would love to get a new Apple TV to go along with that. And I'm certainly not going to connect that TV to the internet. It's going to maybe connect like once over Ethernet to get a firmware update, and then I'm not plugging it into the internet because I don't trust the TV companies at all to be good stewards of my information. In fact, they've shown to do things like watch the TV screen at all times, so they can, no matter what you're watching, they can figure out what it is that you're watching and then report that back to, whoever, right? Toshiba or whoever made your TV, which they don't need any of that information. So I'm not gonna give it to them. So I'm a big fan of the streaming box, and I am a big fan of Apple's incarnation in particular. But I do think that it probably could use like a general refresh of the UI, as long as they don't screw it up. I mean, the downside of doing it a lot is you end up with the Xbox syndrome. If any of you all have an Xbox, you know that like seemingly every couple of months you'll open you turn your Xbox on and you're like, oh, an entirely new UI for the menu that I now have to figure out how to use, that is in no way related to the UI they used 3 months ago. And so now I have to like learn a whole new design language to navigate, to get through my games and whatever. So I think that's, stability is a good thing in this case, right? You open it, it does what you want. But probably sort of to boil it all down, biggest thing for me would be a remote that works. Maybe just give me a D-pad or like arrow buttons and an OK button and a play button, and you can kind of dump the rest. Like we don't really use the Siri functionality very much because it often doesn't even get what we say correct anyway. So yeah, I would say make it fit my hand, dump the touchpad, give me a D-pad, and I'll be good.
It's funny you mentioned the TV app keeping track of what you're watching, because the only time I get new notifications of like new episodes are available is after I watch the episode of the thing that becomes available.
Nice.
So I hardly ever use the TV app because I'm already like on top of the hypothetical thing. One thing I would love to see from the TV app though is like upcoming, like if it can guesstimate like at what time a new episode will come on, and I could see that in some sort of schedule, that would be awesome. Because then
a TV guide, if you will.
Yeah, well, that crazy talk.
Impossible.
Yeah.
But that way I don't have to keep in my head, and it's one less thing to kind of think about. Spencer, how would you? What wishes do you have for the Apple TV?
Yes, good that you mentioned wishes, because I think this would never happen. But like Ben, I think the Apple TV is basically perfect for what it is. It works great. I agree that the remote is probably the most controversial part of it. Other than that, it's great, and does everything I need it to. I would say, as a realistic guess, they'll preemptively jump to 8K because there are now 8K TVs that are slowly coming out. So I can see them just saying, "Hey, we support 8K." Great. All of the HDMI specs are out and available. The Xboxes, PS5 all support 8K, so it's getting there. I can see them doing that. As a sort of a wish, I often have more than one device connected to my TV, like my Apple TV, like my Switch. And switching between inputs is always a pain because I can't use my or my Apple TV remote. I would love if they would do a sort of multi-port Apple TV that lets you pass through, because I use a separate box for that, and one, it costs money, and two, it's I don't know, it's just
probably
not
mediocre at best, I would guess, right? Like,
yeah,
I've used it before, and they're usually not very, they don't work that well.
They're not that good, and it runs Android OS like on top of that box, and it's like all I want you to do is switch inputs. That's it. You don't need to have apps built into that. I already, it's just a whole thing. So if they could have, maybe like a little elongated tic-tac shape Apple TV, that'd be sweet, with like 3 or 4 HDMI inputs. That would be a dream for me.
All the way 10 inputs.
10. Yeah, whatever. I mean, it already does. It already controls, my my sound bar and everything. The only thing I ever have to use my TV remote for is switching inputs, and that's a pain.
What if they made an Apple TV soundbar, and it's like a sound bar? It's got multiple inputs. It's an Apple TV. It's never.
That would be great. Yeah.
The home bar.
The home bar.
Yeah, the home bar.
I mean, they've got capacity because
HomePod.
they canceled the HomePod, so now they can just start making the home bar instead.
I know. That's not a bad point, because I was talking to Dimitri earlier, and I said man, I really want to get a second HomePod so I can do the stereo setup. But if they
better
make
hurry
the
up.
home bar, perfect. I'm golden. I don't even need one. So
Can they
not a
have
bad idea.
stock, right? Like if you wanted to buy a full-size HomePod, you could probably go buy one like at the
Oh,
Apple
yeah.
store.
I think
but
Yeah, I could.
the black one is out of stock. It's the white one that's still in stock
oh, interesting.
at Apple.
That's okay. I mean, I would have probably just bought one like secondhand because,
Yeah.
you know, I got mine basically as soon as it came out and it works great. So, but yeah.
It's
Oh,
a
you
shame
go
that
for
the HomePods were kind of been discontinued, because something I always thought Apple should do is make the Apple TV an ARC capable HDMI port, which means that the TV can output the sound to the Apple TV from other inputs, and then the Apple TV can just stream that to the HomePods. Now, the part where that falls apart is if you've ever used the HomePod theater setup with your Apple TV, you'll notice there is a delay between the HomePods playing and you interacting with like playing pause and stuff like that. Like, it's imperceptible when you're pressing a button, but it is perceptible enough where it's not streaming it at super low latencies, like a Wii U would have been streaming its screen like wirelessly. So it's not a very low latency setup. It has a few fractions of a second of delay, and that's plenty to really mess with audio in terms of sync. And what the Apple TV does is it delays the video to kind of keep all that going, so you never notice. So it's not an issue on the Apple TV, but it would be an issue with other things connected. But if they kind of had a second revision of the HomePods and a second revision of the Apple TV, I could definitely see that as being a cool setup. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned, Spencer, that like you can't use your Apple TV remote to kind of switch inputs and stuff like that. That's all like I use whenever I want to use the Apple TV. I just use the Apple TV remote. It wakes up the TV, switches inputs, and that kind of all works. If I want to use a switch, I just put my switch in, that switches the inputs with CEC, and that kind of just works. I hardly ever need to use my TV remote. The only time is when the on-screen HUD for the volume kind of gets stuck, and then I need to hunt for the TV remote to change the volume on the TV that I never use. So that way the HUD kind of refreshes and goes away. But I otherwise never touch my TV remote. But the TV remote actually does control the Apple TV through the CEC stuff, which is kind of neat. So that's all kind of cool how that's all put together. Now, as far as the remote, like if I were to redesign it, I would keep the swipe functionality, because I think that's actually a very convenient way to get around quickly on the TV. Like, it's maddening pressing the arrow key 17 times to go left and right sometimes, and it's very convenient to be able to swipe. What Apple does need, though, is some guides on their little touch panel. Like, just putting a circle around that with 4 little dots for the directional pad is often enough for your thumb to just search and feel. Like, through simple heuristics, Apple, take free ideas. If the thumb comes from outside the touchpad to the inside, don't register it as a swipe. Like, just let the thumb feel around. It can find where those 4 dots are, and then it knows where to press, because there's a lot of like secret commands on the Apple TV remote. Like, if you press on the right edge, it will skip 10 seconds forward. But is that right edge at the bottom of the touchpad, or is it the middle? You have no idea if you're not looking at it. So just having like a little bit of a guide there can be really useful. And having that a circular ridge will let your thumb know, oh, it's safe to kind of slide in from the outside, and I'm not going to accidentally mess anything up. And that can allow you to feel around. And that, combined with a less symmetric remote, would probably make something that works really, really well. Alternatively, they can go the LG route, where it just kind of becomes a wand that you can just point to the TV and just select things, and that works quite well. And I'm sure Apple can source better components to make it work even better. So it's just a matter of them wanting to put the investment into it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I forgot to mention, I would love to see them adopt, and maybe this is going to be a little controversial. I'd love to see them adopt mouse and keyboard support as well.
There is keyboard support.
Yeah, okay, mouse support. Because now that the iPad is introducing mouse support, You've got, things like games or remote, VNC devices where you could sit at your TV and work off of your computer. I can see that being maybe a little bit of an edge case, but at the point where they probably have a fair amount of the implementation done just with an iPad, I think it would be cool to see that support come over to tvOS as well.
Well, especially considering that the Apple TV as a product is priced at what, 2 or 3 times, the price of the average sort of streaming stick. So if you want to continue to justify, I feel like at the time it probably premium price, but it kind of made sense. But like the more the Apple TV has been a product, and the more that it has, I guess I should say, the more that other products have kind of caught up to it as far as functionality. I think it'll be difficult for Apple to, I say this and they're going to do this exact thing, but to announce a 2021 Apple TV where it is essentially what they've already been selling, maybe slightly improved in a few minor ways, and charge that same $200, $250, whatever they're charging for the Apple TV, and say like, yeah, you can go buy a, what is it, like $40 Fire Stick, but like buy this other thing instead because it's much, much better. It's like, well, yes, it is better in a variety of ways, but like, is it really, right? And I think it's more of this is a computer for your TV might actually help like justify that price than
absolutely.
If like, all it does is stream Netflix, right? For example.
Or even,
like the only reason I have, oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
Sorry. I was just going to say, like, that's a good point because the only reason I have a Chromecast is because I already bought a $300 Apple TV. The Chromecast was $50 and I needed it for my other TV. So, in a realistic sense, if there is a reason, a good, reason to pay that,
right?
The Chromecast does 4K. It does HDR. It has streaming services built in. So where are you going to differentiate yourself from that or,
And in many cases, those streaming apps are shockingly similar in their implementations, right? I mean, they they look almost exactly the same as their Apple TV app versions.
I mean, something Apple could do also is turn the Apple TV into an iOS desktop. Stick an M1 or an A14X in there. I mean, the chip costs the same to them. I mean, they can just make a super low price point for a super limited device. Those that don't need a full-on computer to do full-on computer stuff and would prefer an iOS-like interface that's much simpler and easier to use, they could use that as their computer, whether it's connected to a TV, whether that's connected to just a monitor with a keyboard or a mouse. That could be a really easy setup for a lot of people, and it could be a really price-conscious setup for many as well that don't need something more than that. And that would justify a lot of the points. Another way to make it work is to make it a gaming device. Like I'm sure the A14X is going to be no slouch. Include game controllers when you sell it, then it becomes viable as a gaming device because everyone will own the stuff that you need to game with it.
Have either of you
already
played
has Apple Arcade.
A game on the Apple TV using the Siri remote, like turn sideways like they tell you to do?
Like half of one time.
It's not very good.
Is it terrible? I've not done it.
Yeah,
I just assume that it's
as terrible as you think.
Okay.
I mean, you can pair like an Xbox or a PS4 remote or controller, and that's what I would do if I was going to do that.
But yeah,
exactly. So if they include it, even if it's like, I don't know, it doesn't have to be that good, but even if it's like a somewhat half decent-ish, maybe sort of remote or controller, it would be better than the tiny thing
they could just buy Steelcase and then just start selling those controllers on Apple controllers.
So
or use your iPhone or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, tactile buttons are nice though.
I mean, you can use your iPhone as a through the remote app as a little mini gaming controller for the Apple TV. But again, it's the same problem as the Apple remote. It's not something where you can feel around with your thumbs and know where everything is.
Right.
And that's where it kind of falls apart. It's an ergonomic mess.
You know what else I want? This is never ever going to happen, but I want tvOS to be more opinionated about how streaming apps are supposed to display playback controls, because every single time I get into one of the 6 or 8 different apps that we use for streaming various kinds of content, I have to remember which version of the on-screen controls does this app use, like YouTube versus playing something from like directly from Apple, like if you bought a season of something, or Amazon or Hulu. They all work a little differently, and it drives me crazy. And I so often I will, like, the HUD will come up, right, and I'll be like, okay, I've figured out what I want to do. I want to dismiss the HUD. And in YouTube, you can actually hit, I think it's the menu button, and it makes the HUD disappear. Yeah. On any other app, if you do that, it like it kicks you out of the app, it kicks you out of the video that you're watching. That's like, I would love to be able to have a little, and I realize that's a little, from a developer perspective, that's a little heavy-handed, right? That's like, hey, we're going to dictate to you how you're supposed to do this, but on the which as a developer,
you're allowed to do that.
But Apple already does that in so many other ways, like sort of dictate to us as developers how we're supposed to do things. I think they should just, for the sanity of everyone who uses streaming apps on the Apple TV, I feel like it would be just so much nicer if they said, like, hey, these are the buttons that you're supposed to support when it comes to like playback controls, so that it's mostly the
YouTube app. That's the one that has soiled it, because they re-implemented everything from scratch so you can get recommendations or something. Right. And it's impossible to use. Like, if you don't know how to use it, and even if you do know how to use it, the minute you get used to that, like, nothing else works the same. So it's kind of a pointless
and then, like,
endeavor.
Why in the YouTube app is it so difficult to, like, for example, click on a video, start watching it, or even like from the recommendation page, just say, hey, this looks interesting and I want to mark this for later. It's called Watch Later, right? There's a whole playlist you can set up for that.
Yeah.
Why can't you just do that from the recommended? Or even if you play the video, then just like give me one quick button to tap to say, like, I don't want to watch this right now, but I want to watch it later. If you know how to do that, you have to like go into the HUD and then go over to this other thing, which when you start messing with the buttons on the HUD, it actually pauses playback briefly, which is super annoying. And then you go into this thing and you say, okay, add to playlist, and then it like doesn't always pick Watch Later. Sometimes it picks one of your other. It's just, anyway, I could do a whole podcast complaining about the YouTube interface.
Yeah, well, Google, they can't make it platform specific. They can't make their UI match every other app. They have to say, oh no, we're Google,
right?
Just look at the Gmail app on your iPhone and it looks nothing like, I mean, it looks like you're using an Android device. They just have to do that. And
I'm at the point where I refuse to use the YouTube app. I just AirPlay whenever I want to use YouTube. I mean, it works far better than their app, and that's a problem.
Quite sad.
Yeah,
it's very sad.
On to other rumors. There is a rumored HomePod screen device. I don't know what this is going to be called, but it's essentially an iPad that's plugged into the wall.
What is the Echo? It's called the Echo Show, right? Is the version of the Echo that has the screen on it?
Kinda.
I think so. And then Facebook has one, and Google has one.
I've not heard of this one.
And people want one.
I'd be pretty surprised if they discontinued the HomePod as it was, and then in a couple months we see them unveil a HomePod that is basically like you said, like a small iPad with a speaker attached to it. That just seems...
What's annoying to me is they completely discontinued it. Why didn't they just... I don't know.
Because they never made one since they started selling it. They just made one batch. And
did you hear that they never actually sold... They never produced more? They produced their original...
But if they still
I think they did
them,
in 2018, but that was probably the last run.
But if they still had them, why did they discontinue them and just not let them run out and then...
I think they were running
if they had enough stock...
Like they had no more black ones.
That's so lame.
But yeah,
though.
I don't get the screen thing. Like I guess I understand as like maybe a kitchen device, because it would let you, like, we use an iPad to like look at recipes and stuff like that when we're cooking or whatever. So I could see how maybe having just a permanent sort of screen with a speaker in your kitchen could be useful, and you could invoke, hey Dingus, right, like show me this recipe or whatever. Right. But I don't know. Like, I feel like if they were to make such a thing, it would be $500, and then nobody's gonna buy it because it's too expensive. And I don't know. It seems. Whenever I saw the ones that the other companies brought out, right? Like I thought, this is kind of cool, but it's for one thing, creepy coming from these other companies, and also just seems like it's got very limited utility for the price and stuff. And so I think my opinion is still the same. Like, even if Apple were to produce such a product, I don't think that even necessarily the things they would bring to the table, right, would fix like the product enough to make it something that people would actually want en masse.
May as well make a dock for an iPad, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Give me a new hi-fi
like,
with an iPad dock, right? Like, done.
Yeah, I can see them, it being a replacement to the HomePod in that, just like an Apple TV or a HomePod, it would be your HomeKit hub and everything like that. But at the same time, something with a screen, I wouldn't use that way. If I'm going to turn on or off a HomeKit device, I'll yell, hey, whatever, or use the phone that's already in my pocket with a screen to turn it on or off as well. So it's like this weird middle ground that I don't really realistically see me walking over to it in my kitchen to turn something on or off as like a HomeKit hub per se.
Right.
You could probably yell at this one too, but then it's like, why do you have a screen in the first place? Other than, like you said, to show a YouTube video, a recipe, or something like that. But that's...
I'm like, you never want one unless you're an Apple user, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're an Apple user, you already have your devices.
Right.
But if you're not an Apple user, then it makes sense that they sell something like this because you don't have anything that's like it.
Yeah, it's true.
But as an Apple user, it makes less and less sense, especially for Apple to sell, which is unfortunate. But if it did exist, like, it'd be a great opportunity for developers. Just another iPad kind of thing. Maybe Siri is a bit more integrated in terms of like recipes and stuff like that, because that would be a use case. Hopefully that they foresee. Maybe they don't.
I mean, they're gonna have to make Siri a lot smarter to make that useful.
Especially considering that they took Siri out of the name of the remote. I feel like, I don't know.
They're trying to downplay it.
I just don't understand how Siri is so far behind other voice assistants where Alexa, sorry, anyone that's listening, or the whatever Google's is, the assistant or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you can ask it or tell it to do something and it just runs circles around Siri, and it's like, Apple, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, even like
it seems really weird to me.
When I go in my bedroom and if it's nighttime, I use my Apple Watch because it's just what's handy to activate the nightstand lights that we have in our bedroom. And so I, hold down the crown and I wait for it to like click on my wrist, and then I say, hey Dingus, turn on the bedroom lights, and like I'm already at this point, I'm on my way into the bedroom, right? So like I need these lights to come on soon. And so like I'm round in the corner, I'm like walking into the bedroom and I'm like telling it to do it, and usually what happens is that she'll say something like coming right up or working on that, or she'll say something like that, right? And then I don't know, 5-6 seconds will go by, and oftentimes I'm headed for the closet to like, because I keep like my I have this like little bowl that has like all of my like my wallet and all that stuff in there, right? So like I'm usually like taking my wallet out of my pocket and putting it away or whatever, right, at the end of the day. And so like I'm walking through the bedroom into the bathroom, into the closet, and like usually I make it like most of the way to the closet, and then she's finally like, okay, done, and then like lights come on. It's just like, well, that would have been helpful 10 seconds ago. But now at this point I've basically turned the flashlight on my phone on to see what I'm looking at because you didn't turn the lights on. It's just like, and like they're HomeKit lights. I mean, it's as integrated as you can get, and I'm invoking it from my watch, and it's all on Wi-Fi. Like I don't understand why it's so terrible at this point. I mean, I don't think I'm asking for the moon here. I'm just asking for like a thing that you claim to do to work and do it the way that you claim that it works, in the sort of allotted time.
Sometimes I foresee Apple, or I think that Apple may have foreseen like antitrust issues with things like HomeKit and Siri like very early on. So they decided to let's let others kind of take care of it. When I would have wished that Apple did not have a HomeKit, they just made all the devices. They made smart plugs. They made smart switches. And all of that would work so reliably, and it would just be one integrated system. And I would happily change everything over because for the most part, Apple stuff works, and it works forever. Like I'm still using AirPod Extremes, as you can see behind me. I have 3 that are like scattered throughout my house, and they work excellent. Like I'm getting over gigabit speeds for most of my devices that support it, and that just works smoothly. So like it's a shame that they pulled out on a lot of this stuff. I think that they were probably seeing the writing on the wall and they wanted to avoid it as much as possible, but that kind of made it kind of like dead in the water in a way. And I don't think HomeKit ever really took off. Like no one cares about the secure, like having a secure home. They'll just convenience wins over all of that, which is why no one's really kind of put a lot of energy into making HomeKit devices. And those that did, they're expensive and they don't work that well. And that's a problem. It can be expensive, but it has to work well, and they don't, which is kind of a shame.
It's a bummer. I mean, you know, myself, I don't want to go and buy Amazon smart devices just out of principle. I've bought HomeKit things, and yeah, they're almost always, you know, 1.5, 2 times more expensive, and that's kind of the price you pay. I know that a while ago, maybe a year or so ago, maybe less, there was talk of, you know, Apple, Google, maybe Amazon as well, kind of collaborating on an open standard for home devices, which would be awesome. You know, you'd hope that with Apple being in there that it would still be secure, and then you wouldn't have to worry about the prohibitively expensive devices as well. I don't know.
I think they're prohibitively just like expensive because you have to put the engineering effort to make them more secure and not just thrown together or a relabeling of something that exists that someone else developed, which frankly is a lot of what is on the market. So the home aside, there are also rumors of a new M1 iMacs, even in the latest betas that just came out today. There are apparently 2 models of iMacs that are set to be released soon-ish. I mean, why would they be in the beta if they're not coming out when the beta comes out, right? Or that's what I hope. I said in the past that I think the M1 is probably going to have 2 tiers associated with it. There's going to be the M1S, which is going to be like a speedier version of an M1 for the devices that can warrant it, and then an M1X for an extensible M1 for something like a Mac Pro, and that would all be part of the same kind of generation, or that year. Like every year would get a new increment, I assume. So maybe we'll be seeing M1S iMac soon. What do you two think?
And in fun new colors, apparently, at least according to that one where they were showing off anodized aluminum that looks like, I think it's the latest. They just used the latest generation of, I think, the iPad Air Airs colors. So like a mint green and a pink and a blue. I guess the same colors as like the AirPods Max, right? Most of those colors I don't love, but it would be cool just to be able to buy a Mac computer in a color that is not silver or gray. That would be fun. I have an M1 MacBook Air that I love, and I almost pulled the trigger on a gold one, and then I chickened out at the last minute and ended up getting space gray because I just was like, I don't know, like it's because I'm not actually a huge fan of gold as a color, but I was like, but it's just so cool and different. Like it had me basically considering gold simply because it was different. I would be all over like a product red MacBook Air or something, but yeah, that would be kind of cool. And it's showing, again, these renders are just sort of rumored mock-ups, but the idea would be that maybe it would go in the direction of sort of a Pro Display XDR shape, so less rounded, more boxy. The stand probably would be a little bit different. Maybe the stand would be adjustable and more than just tilt, which would be pretty cool if you could actually adjust your iMac on its stand, like vertically, or even like rotate it from sort of landscape to portrait or whatever. That would be pretty cool. So I bought an iMac in like early fall last year, a pretty high-end iMac for my main computer, which I love, except that it exploded on me the other day because I did a routine Bixer update. That wasn't even that big of a deal. It was like a minor point release, and it decided to just completely explode and tell me that it like couldn't find the hard drive and was just totally borked. So I had to start all over. But other than that, it's been a great computer. And I don't really have a desire to upgrade to an M1 powered iMac at this point for that machine. I have the M1 MacBook Air, but I'm generally speaking, because of my experience with the MacBook Air, I am like all in on this whole Apple Silicon conversion. Like, let's do it. Like, let's convert every single thing in their lineup to running their chips. It's been super stable, nice and fast, no issues at all, and not even really any issues like running software, right? You'd think that with that there'd be this huge problem with half your software doesn't work because it doesn't hasn't been written to run on it. But Rosetta 2, I think is what it's called, right? The newest Rosetta works flawlessly. I don't even know if some of these apps haven't been updated for Apple Silicon yet. Works fine. No real difference in the way that it operates. So I say bring on the M1 iMac and bring on the sort of M-powered everything. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that all the colors that Apple is coming out with are all aluminum anodized colors, because color doesn't work as well once you make it shiny. Like, for instance, my favorite color is orange, as you might have been able to guess through various hints. But I would never buy an orange laptop because the metallic version of orange is gold, and I don't like gold. That's something that I do not want. But a glossy orange or a plasticky orange works totally fine. So it's a shame that everything is kind of super metallic nowadays, because you're limited in terms of what colors do work well in that context. I always think back to the iPod line, because Apple had so many colors with the iPod, and I would have hoped that they had learned from that, and they brought colors to more things, but they always kept it on the lower end models. Like the iPhone 12, for instance, the normal iPhone 12 comes in a bunch of colors. The iPhone 12 Pro, not so much. Who would be willing to pay more for more color options? Maybe people that want all of the things, but you're kind of not allowed, which is kind of silly at the same time. So a ton of us got iPhone 12 non-Pro just because we wanted a color option, which is a bit of a shame, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I will always go with, a silver and or white iPhone. That's my standard. As soon as they introduced a color though that I liked, blue, I was all over that. I mean, I would much prefer a color that I enjoy. Blue is my favorite color, and so I would always take a blue iPhone over any other color any day. So I think a lot of people would do that. I feel like, and this was a little before my time. I remember them, but I was in grade school when they came out, the plastic iMacs with different colors and everything.
The OG iMac.
I remember seeing those in schools, and I thought they were so cool because they were colored. I don't know how many were used in the professional workplace, but if they were, I think, professionally we've gone to this very like sterile, everything has to be black and white, very monochrome, and I would love to see a little bit more, color diversity in there, just to, why does your office all have to have the same color of computer? Why does that matter? It would be awesome, to have more colors. I mean, now they've got them on the new iPad Air. They're kind of introducing color, but I like next year, like Dimitri said, I would love to see the Pro model iPhones have just as many colors as the non-Pro. Like, who cares? It's probably not a huge issue to spit out a new color. I don't know how hard
and
it
iPhone
is to paint
Pros are not
but
being used in a Pro setting. They're just like fancier
Exactly.
iPhones. Like, it's not like you have to like. Why are the iPhone Pro colors muted? Right, they're less intense than the ones on the regular iPhone.
Because you're not allowed to be a colorful human being, Ben.
Yeah. Well, and the funniest
That's
part is that I've wanted a red iPhone for a long time, and that I've always like,
right.
they've traditionally released the red iPhones like as a special edition way after they launch the new model. So by then, it's like I already have the new iPhone. I'm not gonna wait 4 months and then buy another iPhone just to
Yeah.
get the red one. And so this time around, right with the iPhone 12, I was finally able to order a red iPhone from the get go. Except that it's like
It's pinkish.
it's red,
coral.
but it's like it's like a salmony, pinky
Yeah.
red. Like it's like
It's an
a red
opinionated
with
red.
some milk added to it. Like it's not like a
Yeah.
vibrant, bright, like really intense red. Like I think it was the
Yes.
iPhone 8. I think that's the Project Red version of that one. Was a
Yes,
very
or the
cool, like,
7.
very strong red. Like, and even the red on the aluminum is actually very like cool and strong. But the red on the glass is just this like, I don't know. I bought it anyway. I was like, I'm buying a red iPhone, but I ended up putting it in a red leather Apple case because I was like, for one thing, super slippery. So even though the sides are better, I still wanted that grip. But also, I wanted it to be like red. So I ended up going with regular red. So that would be really cool is if they did go in on the iMac with the colors, like. Don't be timid, Apple. Right? Like make really strong, really vibrant colors. I think people would eat that up.
Yep.
So Apple's listening to this and they're like, this is why we don't do colors. It's like, Ben's not happy with our red. Spencer's not happy with our blue. Dimitri's not happy with our orange. It's like, forget it. Just white and black.
too hard.
Can't please
no more
anyone.
colors. Okay.
And have your dumb gray and space gray and whatever
Yeah.
muted colors for those that want it, but
Don't
I
call
think a
them
lot
dumb,
of people
Spencer.
would use colors. They're dumb.
Okay, so to finish up our recent rumors, there's one last rumor which is especially hilarious considering what they've been doing, and that is
Yes.
Intel saying that they are open to manufacturing Apple Silicon chips. So for those that don't know, Intel has been running an ad campaign that has been smearing Apple, and especially the Apple laptops that do not feature Intel chips, as much as they can, and dragging them through the dirt. And now they want to make friends and say, let's make your chips too.
Using their own character against them. In fact, they're using Justin Long, the actor who portrayed the Mac in the original Mac versus PC ads from the late 2000s that were really popular. They hired that actor to come in and do like I'm a PC ads where he's sort of representing like what modern Intel based computers can do, Windows computers can do. And basically, it seems like the bulk of their argument is that because lots of Windows laptops nowadays can flip their screen around and become a tablet,
That's thanks to Intel, by the way.
What's that?
Yeah.
That's thanks to Intel.
Of course, yeah. They wouldn't be able to do that
There's
without an
special
Intel
little
chip.
things in the chip.
Yeah.
Oh, and you don't have to use a dongle as well, except pretty much every computer on the planet uses
Also
USB-C
thanks to Intel.
at least once.
Because
Right.
they make
Also,
the
they-
chips to interact with
Of
USB-C.
course, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Only Intel chips can use USB-C, of course.
Well, and the funniest part is that they don't ever mention the fact that Macs have run on Intel for the last 15 years and have done so very well. Like, what about any of the things you talk about in this ad makes the case that like this is something that's only possible on an Intel-backed Windows PC? It's like,
They
there's
didn't get to
nothing.
put their Intel sticker, Intel Inside,
Yeah.
on any of the Macs, so they're
Yeah.
clearly mad about that. So 15
Yeah,
years
well-
of angst.
Well, what they're clearly mad about is the fact that they lost a ton of money with Apple leaving.
Oh yeah.
There was,
sure.
I mean,
I thought
Which,
they were
technically
minor
they haven't even
computer
left
manufacturer.
yet, right? Because the Mac Pro still
No,
runs
well,
on Intel, right? Like
sure.
I'm sure Apple's still buying Intel chips,
Yeah.
at a much reduced capacity that they used to, but they are still
in the
doing
next
it.
few years,
But yeah,
they're going to
it's-
lose so much money.
Right.
Not to mention the bad rep that they got from Apple chips overheating and everything, and then you bring out the M1 in a fanless MacBook Air that just absolutely crushes it. It's like, I'm sure they're just like, oh, please come back. I miss you. Give me more money type of thing.
I don't know this for a fact, but I would be not at all surprised if the deal that Intel struck with Apple probably had better margins than the deal that Intel has with the hundreds of
Yeah, because
also
it's a
ran
specialized
PC
chip just for
manufacturers.
Apple.
Yeah, who slap out PCs for $300, right? I bet you the margin on that is not nearly as good as it is on a $2,000 MacBook, as far as what Intel gets. So yeah, I'm sure they are definitely licking their wounds on the idea that, I mean, the thing is they're not really competitive at all anymore. Like, is it? I think the Ryzen chips are starting to do really cool things in gaming. Nvidia has locked up the GPU market forever. Apple is taking over the ARM based sort of part of processor manufacturing and design. And so, like, what else? And
they're getting crushed on all sides.
They tried to make a modem industry, which that didn't go anywhere. So like I'm sure they can see kind of the walls closing in on them, and they realize, oh crap, we don't have much left to hang on to. So let's lash out at probably one of our most successful partners ever. And then I only saw this before we started recording, just the headline that, like, apparently Intel is now saying they want to help manufacture Apple Silicon, which okay, like this is just who's running their marketing?
Weird timing.
Like, their PR person needs to be fired because this is terrible timing.
Well, no, their new CEO is the one that said that. The one that was all very, very anti, like, kind of took a jab at Apple as soon as he sent a message out to his.
Well, he's the one that said something like, we don't. We're going to be way more important than some lifestyle company.
Exactly,
right?
That same guy. He's the one that's now saying, "Hey, it'd be sweet to work with you again." Like, come on, what a joke.
Yeah, and Tim Cook's like, well, in the time that you guys started up this silly campaign, we've literally built a new fab that we're going to go ahead and just crank out more of our chips. We don't need your help, right? Your second-rate help at this point. We've got it covered.
And not to mention that when Apple came out with and showed off their Apple Silicon chips, they didn't really name Intel as the other chip. They were
they were pretty polite about it.
They were very polite about it.
Just throw them under the bus that would become the M1, and that would then run over and kind of destroy the competition in many key ways. And the only way it's not winning is with the very high performance, high CPU wattage chips that Apple's not making. They're making low wattage chips that hardly consume anything, and they're competing with the high power chips. Which...
We would tell you that this brand new entry level, first crack at it kind of desktop quality chip is totally smoking the competition, which includes Intel, our former biggest partner. But we're going to be polite about it and say that it's whatever they said on the graph, like other manufacturers, or they had some very polite euphemism that was basically meant Intel, but they were being polite about it. And I think that probably if Apple were, the next time we see somebody get on stage at an Apple event and they talk about the performance of their M series chips,
they're probably going to mention how much faster it is than Intel.
Yeah, they'll be less polite, I think.
Yeah, and with good reason. Yeah, it's never a good look when you start flip-flopping on things like Intel has. It's just like, okay, good luck, dude.
Right.
Okay, so this week's episode is brought to you by Huuungry. So Huuungry, that's Hungry with 3 U's, is the iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch app you turn to when you really want to eat but are blinded by the multitude of choices available to you and your insatiable hunger. Huuungry isn't here to help you discover new restaurants or flavors. No, it has a much more humble purpose. You tell it about all your favorite restaurants, and it will deploy its cryptographically advanced random number generator, invoked by shaking your phone in frustration, to make the decision of what to eat for you. Stuck at home in quarantine and sick of ordering pizza? Use Huuungry. Did Huuungry just suggest pizza again? Don't fret, as options for another cuisine, a cheaper option, or something closer, or simply another option are just a button away. Huuungry also comes with a collection of fun animated iMessage stickers so you can share your hunger with others. Thanks again to Huuungry for sponsoring our show. Search for Huuungry, that's Huuungry, Huuungry, on the App Store today to give it a try. So with all that out of the way, it's time for Compiler Error, a segment where I get to test my fellow completionist knowledge about Swift, Apple, and all things development. So a bit of story time. We were supposed to record yesterday, but I was having some severe internet weather. So I wanted to make a compiler error all about like packet loss and stuff like that. Then I got way more interested in undersea cabling. So that's what today's theme is, undersea cabling. So let's bring that up. And let's start with statement number 1. A colony of electric eels was responsible in 2013 for disturbing the operation of fiber optic cabling, resulting in significant packet loss to the islands of French Polynesia. Statement number 2. In 2014, a security camera revealed that sharks were biting undersea fiber optic cabling, presumably attracted to the magnetic field emitted by the high voltage power required for optical repeaters. Statement number 3. An undersea cable is technically referred to as a submarine communications cable, and unlike the name implies, has little to do with submarines, but the cables were used as early as the 1850s with the telegraph. And statement number 4. It took more than a year to construct and install the MAREA cable, a 4,000-mile cable connecting Spain to the United States that can transmit up to 200 terabits per second. So those are 4 statements for today. Ben, why don't you go first?
Oh boy. So I do know, I have heard that that the sort of underwater cables do tend to be sometimes disturbed by wildlife and stuff. So I could really believe both of the first, the 2 of them, the one about the eels disturbing the cabling, and then also the sharks being attracted to magnetic field because of the power required for the optical repeaters. So I'm just going to kind of assume that those are both true, since there's only one falsehood in these 4. They both seem plausible, so I'm going to move on. Third one, talking about how it's called a submarine communications cable. Again, seems plausible. I also feel like I remember at some point hearing about how it is the case that we've been using underwater cables like this for a very long time, including all the way back to before computers, like when we had telephone lines and even the telegraph. So that makes sense. I don't know if the 1850s is too far back or not, but it seems plausible. So the last one took more than a year to construct the Maria cable, I guess is probably how you'd pronounce that. A 4,000-mile cable connecting Spain to the United States that can translate to 200 terabits per second. So I feel like if that's wrong, it's probably the case that it's wrong about one of the numbers. That Dimitri's being tricky and like saying, well, like, yeah, it is a real cable, but it was 150 terabits per second, not
198.
Yeah, something like that. We accuse him of that all the time. He doesn't actually do that often, but
he hasn't done that in so long. I know.
We do accuse him of it all the time.
Could happen anytime.
So I don't know. The first 2 just seem they're very similar. So it's either the case that they're both true, right? Or that one of them is false and you're trying to like throw us off the scent, right? Because again, it seems plausible that would happen, but is it true that both of these things happened? I'm at this
There's
point,
a lot of fish in the sea, my friend.
Yeah, I'm at this point. I'm just arguing myself into a circle, right? I'm not making any pronouncements or any definitive. I'm not deciding on anything. Oh boy, I'm gonna say number 3 because I feel like 1850 is a little. I don't know. The telegraph is very old. Whatever. Number 3. I'm going to say number 3 because I think the date might be wrong, but these are probably famous last words.
Spencer?
Yeah. To be honest, all of these sound like fairly legitimate things. Nothing really sticks out to me as like, oh, that's the one. I think the biggest thing for me, well, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's either 1 or 2. I'm just trying to kind of decide which one. I'm sure that there is definitely disturbances, but I feel like a lot of that would have been hopefully thought of and mitigated. You would hope. I kind of feel like number 2, where they're actually biting the cabling, is maybe a little bit of a stretch, where I can maybe see electric eels somehow disturbing things. So I'll go with number 2.
Okay. So let's take these in reverse order. So number 4, it took more than a year to construct and install the MAREA cable, a 4,000-mile cable separating Spain and the United States. and you both believe this one to be a code completion, and it is a code completion. And they were especially proud of this. So this was a joint production between, I think, Microsoft and a Spanish telecom operator. And they completed it in a third of the amount of time. So it typically takes quite a few years to actually have the boat go across one of either the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean. And they essentially have a giant spool of cable. It's quite thick. And they lay it down little by little. And they're out at sea for quite a long time as they kind of lay the cable. And this one took them just over a year, like a year and a month to kind of put together. And it was the highest capacity cable. Like, they didn't know it would be able to support 200 terabits per second. It was around 160 originally. But once they tested it, they were pleasantly surprised that newer algorithms that have been since developed worked perfectly for kind of getting the most out of that. So that one is true. So going up, so number 3, an undersea cable is technically referred as a submarine communications cable. And Ben believes this one to be the compiler error. And he is most hesitant about the date. But this is a code completion because the telegraph was starting to be used for intercontinental communication back in the 1850s. And it was like towards the very end that they actually completed it. And since then, they've been using these cables mostly for telecommunication. They would use copper cables. They didn't have fiber optic yet, but that worked just fine for the most part. And they are referred to as submarine communications cables. And when I first read that, I was like, oh, this would be a perfect... Like, I didn't read the rest. I was like, oh, so I guess these were used for, like, submarine terminals to actually communicate back, like, via the submarine. But no, it has nothing to do with submarines. And it has everything to do with it being submarine. Yeah, so it's just underwater, located right? Beneath water. So that's where the naming comes from, just like the submarine. So sorry about that, Ben. Going on to number 2. So in 2014, a security camera revealed that sharks were biting undersea fiber optic cabling. And they were attracted to the magnetic field emitted by the high voltage power lines that were needed for the optic repeaters. So these are needed roughly every 100 kilometers to kind of keep the cable going, because light can only go so far on a skinny little fiber optic cable before losing or kind of getting out of phase with itself. So it get blurry and it wouldn't be as crisp, so you can't transmit as much data reliably. So Spencer, you believe this one to be the compiler error. Yeah. But unfortunately, it is a code completion because my God. They only knew about this because security cameras caught the sharks actually gnawing on the cables, thinking it was a little fish, when it was just high voltage cabling under lots of rubber. So they were able to detect that, and they were eating away at those cables. So Google, had to put Kevlar reinforcement on top of those cables, so that way they would stop. All
right, there you go. Well,
stop being bitten. So they've learned since 2014. I believe they use this for all the new cables. There's actually a map that you can look up for all the submarine optical cabling, and that's actually a big security concern because it's all public. And the reason it's public is because you don't want people dropping their anchors on these cables, because that causes, as you can imagine, putting a new cable lots of years to kind of put it back. So you don't want people ruining these by accident. So just like satellites, you tell everyone where you put them. You don't have to tell them what it's used for, but you tell them that you put them there. So that way people don't crash into them by accident. And all this means that number 1 is the compiler error. So there's no such things as electric eels distorting the connection of undersea cabling, which is all fiber. So why would a little electric phenomena
the optical repeaters
they shut down and restart because of the team of electric eels. But this is based on a little bit of reality. So there are copper cabling for power, usually for offshore windmills, wind turbines, and they did do a study to see if this cabling impacted various different wildlife, and it did indeed cause electric eels to migrate more slowly along the cable than they would have otherwise, because they do detect the high voltage power that is going through, and that did distract them quite a bit. But that was pretty much all it did. So something loosely based on electric eels, but that was mostly me completely fabricating up something. Unless there is a story out there about electric eels messing around with French Polynesia in 2013. I didn't find it. But yeah, so that has been our compiler error for today. So
foiled again.
Better luck next time.
Yeah.
So as always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at CodeCompletion to know when new episodes get released. And be sure to check out codecompletion.io/join the club so that we can join our new little community that we're putting together. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Ben, who is at Ferrousguy, that's FERROUSGUY on Twitter, and Spencer, who is at Spencer C. Curtis, that's SPENCERCCURTIS on Twitter, for joining me this week. My name, once again, is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buniol, that's DIMITRIBOUNIOL, and we'll see you all next week.
See you next time.
Bye.